Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Benj. This is What Could Be Bad. Very, very thrilled to be here with John Wood, a close friend, and I would say world leader in so many things, especially education, philanthropy, and social entrepreneurship. So I'm thrilled that you chose to join me here on this show.
It's hard to say no to you, Benj.
Great response. I love that. So there's so many things we're going to talk about. I think where we should start is with your personal story of books, because so much for you that I know about is all wrapped up in your passion for books and reading and what that can do for the world. But I'm curious if there was like a certain book when you were young that got you started.
I don't think it was one book. I think it was just the stack of books that I would read as a young person. When I grew up, my family was middle class, but we were rich in books because my parents had an unlimited budget for books.
That's awesome.
And that was called the library. So my favorite thing every week was to go to the library with my mother, bring books home. And if I was a good kid, and we're both parents.
Yeah.
When you've
We'll
got a 5-year-old, you try to find rewards for them. And my reward, if I was a good boy, did the right thing, was I got to stay up an extra hour and I'd read.
I love it.
And there were times when I was 5, 6 years old, my parents would be asleep before I was because I would take that extra hour and stretch it. So for me, reading books has just always been something that for me is a really important part of my life. And I can't imagine a life without books. I can't imagine a life without the gift of literacy, which we take for granted, but there's hundreds of millions of people in the world who can't even read.
Yeah, you've done so much for people around the world to have access to books. And I think that's phenomenal. I guess it's a good time to just go there. And we'll weave around here on the conversation. So I want to talk about Room to Read, which is such an incredible organization that's globally impactful, that you began basically on your own. And the story of that in your book, Leaving Microsoft to Change the World, which I also want to talk about Microsoft, is really, I thought, really amazing because you made a promise to someone on top of a mountain in the Himalayas, right? Like that led to this change agent of an organization that really shifted people's access to books all over the world in places that would never even get them. Can you tell me about the moment when you were encouraged to go back there and bring books with you?
Yeah, for sure. So when I hit my 7-year anniversary working for Microsoft, it was the go-go years, 91 through 99 were the years I was at Microsoft, years of very fast growth. I needed a holiday. And I went to Nepal to do an 18-day trek, a famous trek called the Annapurna Circuit. It was going to be 18 days with no access to a phone, no access to communications, newspapers. You just check out from the world and trek for 18 days. The end of day 1 of that trek, I met a local man, Nepalese man named Pasupati Niapani. He told me, I was having tea in a little, what the Nepalese call batis, or a tea house.
Yeah.
And I started talking to the guy next to me, and it turned out he was a district resource officer for that part of Nepal, for the education department. And he said, I'm the district resource officer, but I have no resources. And I asked him why, and he said, well, in Nepal, we're too poor to afford education. But until we have education, we're gonna always be poor. And then he switched and said, but tomorrow, would you like to come with me to go see a local school? And I thought this would be a great chance to see the real Nepal, not the tourist version of Nepal.
And getting off the beaten path of the Annapurna.
Yes.
Yeah, trail.
And so we went to this little village called Bahundanda. It was a 2-hour walk from our tea house. Got there around 10 in the morning. There were 400 kids. The conditions were like many schools in the developing world. It was hopeful because kids were showing up, but it was really sad because they had a dirt floor, no windows, no ventilation, 80 kids crammed into a room that should have held probably no more than 20. And then the library was completely empty. They didn't have any books in the library. And I asked why, and the headmaster said, we can't afford books. And I thought, okay, that makes sense because Nepal, at the time, people were living on $1 a day, $2 a day. Books are an undreamed of luxury. Thankfully, the headmaster was a problem solver. He looked at me and he said, perhaps, sir, you will someday come back with books. And I thought about it and I thought, I've made a lot of money at a young age. It's time to start giving back. So I promised him I'd come back, and I thought, selfishly, it seemed like this would be a good excuse to come back to Nepal in another year, another excuse to take a break from Microsoft. Not realizing that when I went back, it would become the moment of my life when I decided I had to break with Microsoft because this was too big of an opportunity to be a hobby. Bringing books to kids who need them, that's not something you should do 1 week a year. It felt like something I should do 52 weeks a year.
Totally. That's a beautiful story. I think, the unfolding of that is one of those things where you don't see where the next domino falls,
Yeah.
but the way it unfolded is really extraordinary. Tell me about when you went back, because I'm a huge fan of that story and I want to share that with people.
Well, so I went back just about a year later. It was interesting. Once I told the headmaster I'd help him, one of his teachers looked at me skeptically and had said, "We see a lot of you trekkers come through our town and we always ask you for help and you always tell us you'll help us. And we never see any of you again." And I loved that. I was like the throwing down of the gauntlet. And I said, "You will, you know, like I'll be back. You'll see me again." Not realizing that my 73-year-old father would be with me. He took this little book project, this little promise I made. He and my mother took it. And they ran with it. They became my co-conspirators.
I love it.
My parents helped to collect. My parents would go to garage sales, and you know, the garage sale closes at 3 o'clock, and they'd be like, "How much would you like for these 50 copies of Dr. Seuss?" And we did a book drive. We had friends at Scholastic in New York help us. Long story short, we collected 3,000 books. Went back to Nepal a year later. A guy who became a good friend, who we just had met casually over the internet, Dinesh Shrestha, who became one of my 2 co-founders of Room to Read along with Aaron Ganju. Dinesh had said, "Don't give all 3,000 books to one school. Share the wealth. I'll help you, and we'll go to 6 different schools." So we rented donkeys. And finally, eventually got big enough to have to upgrade to yaks. But for that first trip, we had 6 donkeys, 3,000 books, visited 6 schools over the course of 2 days.
Wow.
And these kids, when they saw the books, their eyes were like the size of pizzas. They had these huge, wide grins on their faces. They were so excited. And most of them had never seen brightly colored children's books before in their lives. And it was like a mosh pit. These kids were diving on top of the books and running under the tree and trying to read to each other. And it was one of those things where it just felt like this is what I was meant to do. Like I can quit Microsoft and there'll be 15 people lined up the next day to take over my role. I was director of business development for Microsoft China at that point. China was a hot market, a growing market. I knew that Microsoft could replace me. It might be a month or so for the new person to get up to speed, but here was something that nobody was doing. Taking the lesson of Andrew Carnegie, of libraries for the poor, are the ultimate self-empowerment. And nobody, Carnegie did 2,500 libraries in his lifetime in America and the UK and Canada.
I didn't know that.
Nobody had ever Carnegieized the developing world and done libraries at scale. So that's what I began thinking about on that trip of I may have to go back to Microsoft and blow up some bridges and start my life over. And this is my future, perhaps.
For people who have blown up their lives, they know that you don't see all of what's on the other side. You just you have a calling. You have a feeling that that's where you should be heading in some way. But with that terrifying feeling, how did you process that, and how did you get through that?
I overthought it. Was part of I wrote in my journal about it, which is helpful. But at a certain point, you got to put the friggin' journal away. And it involved 2 things. It involved breaking up with my girlfriend because she didn't really want to. As she said, she goes, "You can go build bridges in Nepal or whatever it is you're doing over there." And I was like, "We're actually not building bridges, but whatever." So that's probably that relationship is probably not going to work out. And then I had to go to my boss, who was actually a good friend. And I just walked into his office one Tuesday morning, and I said to him, "Okay, so here's the deal. I'm going to tell you something that you're not going to like hearing. And you're going to try to talk me out of my decision. So here's the deal. I'm going to tell you what I'm doing. Then I'm going to leave for the day. And then you can respond tomorrow when I come in." And he looked at me like I was crazy or weird or whatever. And I go, I quit. I'm sorry. This doesn't work for me." And he said, but. And I said, "No buts.
We've already been over this.
I'll be in tomorrow. I can't discuss this right now." Got out, went to my favorite tea shop about a mile from Microsoft's Beijing campus, pulled out my journal, and I wrote, holy, am I allowed to swear? Holy shit, I did it. I've got my freedom. And it was in that moment when I knew. I was still terrifying because the price of buying my freedom was loss of salary, loss of stock options, loss of subsidized housing. And what I didn't realize was the loss of status. The fact that so many people, when you go to a dinner party, that's the first thing people ask you, like, "Oh,
what do you do?"
Or somebody's like, "Oh, this is Benj, and you've seen him you saw Benj at Red Red." That your status is tied to something. That's not necessarily you. It's kind of John Wood as an executive at Microsoft. So suddenly I was going to parties and people would say, "What do you do?" And I go, "I deliver books on the back of donkeys to rural Himalayan villages." And at that point, you're kind of left standing at you got the chip dip to yourself.
What did that feel like to sort of be unable to have the identity that you knew so well, and then to shift into like doing what you really believe in and you love and you're excited about and fulfills your heart, and it's good for so many people. Where were you at in those moments?
Yeah.
Like when people would just kind of be like, okay, cool.
I think there were good moments and bad moments. I remember a bad moment. I ran into a guy in the Singapore airport who used to work for me. And it was one of those things where like he's going down the escalators, I'm going up. And so I kind of try to run down and say hi to him. And I was, what's going on? And he tells me how his career's going great. I'm doing X and Y and Z. And he's telling me all about himself. And I go, that's great. I'm so happy for you. You're always one of my star performers on my team. And he goes, yeah. He goes, so what's happening? Are you still doing that book thing? And I go, yeah, still doing it. Room to Read. It's going great. And I'm waiting for my 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, that's awesome. Well, good for you. And he walks away. And I had a lot of those types of moments.
Yeah.
But how do you get through it? Number one, you remind yourself, I think stop whining. Life is so difficult for kids who live in poor and low income countries whose parents are not educated, who've lost their parent to cancer and they're being raised by a grandparent in a rural village in Cambodia, the village where the Khmer Rouge had burned down the school. So what am I doing sitting here in the Singapore airport whinging because Peter doesn't recognize my brilliance? So I think that was part of it. And then the second part of it is everybody I've met in the last 25 years with whom I've worked has self-selected to work with me, either at Room to Read during the 20 years I was there, or now with what I'm doing with the Hugo Initiative. People self-select, and people self-select out. I don't want to get involved with that. Or they self-select in. So the biggest long-term upside I've seen is that every single person I've worked with in the last 25 years could have said no to being a donor, could have said no to being a volunteer, could have said no to being a regional board member. Those who have said yes, and there's hundreds and probably thousands of them, they're the greatest people in the world because we get to go build something really cool together.
I love that.
At Microsoft, when people worked with me, they worked with me because their job required them to work with me.
Right. It wasn't a choice. It wasn't,
The ad agency that always took me out for beers on Friday afternoon, oh, you're the greatest. They stopped taking me out for beers. Oh, well, that's okay, because then I found Saboteur, our branding agency in London that does our work pro bono. They opted in to work with us.
There you go. So it's not, it went from having maybe like a significant transactional relationships to meaningful, deeply profounding like experiences.
Based on shared values.
Yeah, Matt, I think there's not enough of that in American society. I feel like there's some, but there's not enough. Like what you are sharing right now is a way to like make sense of a world that feels very distant. I feel like the connectivity of people's daily lives can just be like, oh, there's the guy at the coffee shop, like that's your interaction. You get a coffee, you're polite or whatever, and that's what you have. But to be able to on a daily basis be working and connecting with people that are making an active change in the world can fulfill your heart as much as like give you energy and remind you that the world's not all like the stuff you see on Instagram and all that. It's like it's a very healthy way to live day to day because you're doing meaningful work.
And I have the joy of, for the most part, ignoring social media because we are just a group of people doing real work that is impactful and meaningful. And that's my happiest place is just Kirsten's on the line from Oregon talking about the video that she's working on. And she's a volunteer working on that video to bring the latest story to life. The people you get to work with when you're doing social change are people who are often driven, motivated, highly talented, but you're connecting on something that's not going to profit you or me. It's going to do something to help the next generation to get educated.
That's beautiful, and we need more of it. I'm glad you're continuing to work really hard every day, and I'm glad that you've involved me to be able to help you with that, and my wife too. Kristen and I love being on the Wild West board of Hugo. Let's talk about Hugo a little bit. I think Hugo is phenomenal, and the way I see what you're creating with that is like a continuance of influence, of helping people access education. From libraries to now sending women in low-income countries to have the opportunity to go to college. That's a phenomenal thing to be doing. What was it like to know the challenges of like the exit from Room to Read, which we could talk about that too, I guess. I'm really more interested in like the choices towards positive things rather than like, I got to get out of this circumstance.
Well, I should say the exit from Room to Read was super positive.
Okay.
I mean, by the time I left, Geeta Murali, our third generation CEO, had been running the organization for 5+ years. She was an awesome CEO. She was the right CEO at the right time for that stage of our growth. And so I was still hanging out at Room to Read, doing my thing, rainmaking, globetrotting, doing events, raising millions of dollars.
Yeah.
But it became clear to me at one point that there was something that was not being done that needed to be done. And that was finding a scalable solution for the young women in the program, not just our program, but other NGOs also. There were so many young women who came into the program at age 6 or 7 or 8. And your goal then is to get them in school regularly and to get them reading, get them to get good grades. And these young women would do everything they were told to do. They would wake up early, they would work on the farm before sunrise, they would study in the morning before school, they would study at night, they would get good grades, they were avoiding marriage, they were avoiding pregnancy, they learned about their rights over their body. They were graduating from secondary school. They were applying to university, they were being accepted at university. And then came that all those green lights, then came the red light. Their families could not afford to send them to university. And my wife, Amy, and I saw this again and again and again. We experienced it again and again and again. In Cambodia, in Nepal, in Vietnam, in India, would get approached by the parent or grandparent of a young woman who would say, my granddaughter is not done yet. She wants to be a nurse, a radiologist, a teacher. Can you help her? And as an organization, we were not scoped out to be awarding university scholarships. So with my Room to Read hat on, I had to explain why we could not do this.
Right.
And I would watch just how crestfallen they looked. Like this was their big chance.
Yeah.
So I'd take off my Room to Read hat. I'd put on my John Wood guy with a small donor advised fund and a little bit of extra money in his bank account. And I'd say, how much would it cost?
Yeah.
And they would give me the number in Cambodian or Vietnamese currency. And I would put it on my phone and really? Is that the number? And they'd say, yes, it's so high. And I'd look at it, and the number I saw on my screen was $800. $750, $700. Once you take a strong currency like the US dollar and arbitrage it into Cambodian real, it didn't take much money to get these young women in university. So we started with just helping a couple of young women in this is like what, 6-7 years ago? And then 2 became 4, became 8, became 16, became 32.
Wow.
And then you realize we need a scalable solution.
Sure.
Not just for Room to Read, but other NGOs I talked to, Developments in Literacy in Pakistan, Jago in Bangladesh, Saigon Children's Charity. These organizations were running into the same issue that Room to Read was running into. The young women grow up so quickly. And by 17 or 18, they're saying, I don't want to go work in the glove factory. I want to be a doctor, a radiologist, an accountant. I want to be an entrepreneur. So that's how YouGo was born. It's just like Room to Read was accidental. This was fairly accidental. But what I recognized early on with this time around was we have to go to scale quickly because every day we lose is the day we don't get back. So YouGo was born just over 4 years ago. We are singularly focused on helping a generation of ambitious and promising young women in the world's low-income countries. We're currently working in 9 of them to achieve their dreams of university education, a meaningful career, and that meaningful career will allow them to make enough money to take care of themselves and their family. And any of us who have, like you have, and I have, an educated mother, think about that. What is that educated? It just doesn't just help women. Every young boy in the world deserves to have an educated mother. And if that mother wants to have a career and make money, but she needs a university degree, if it's $800 per student per year, let's make that happen at scale. That's YouGo School.
Absolutely. I got to talk about the common thread that you're bringing up is that women in all these countries are having the same issue, right? And what we have in the world is an underutilized population of women who can really change the way things go. And, call me crazy, but I would rather women be running the world these days. It seems like it would make a lot more sense.
I wouldn't call you crazy. I'd call certain people crazy. But
thank you. So what was it like to see that problem in different cultures? Because, in America, we've got these like back and forth right now of like, some people are worried, women might not be able to have their vote in the next election based on some changing laws that are happening through the government. Are you seeing that all the cultures are like their own independent situation where this comes up? Or is it more of, do you think, because you've traveled to all these places, you've seen it with your own eyes and you've interacted with the people, is this like a global circumstance that just generally women are just underutilized, not given the same opportunities? Is it like globally the same culture, or is it like each culture has a different approach to the way that works out?
Let me talk in general about the 9 countries we work in. So just really brief, to go through them quickly.
Sure.
Southeast Asia, we're in Vietnam, Cambodia, Philippines, Indonesia. South Asia, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Nepal. East Africa, we're in Tanzania.
Right.
If I had to generalize across those 9 countries, I'd say women have traditionally been left behind, underinvested in. There are fewer university slots in those countries than there are in developed economies. Most of those slots go to men. The women who get into university are usually from wealthier families, urban families, or well-connected families.
Okay.
So that's the problem. Now let's go to the really happy news, the solution.
Yeah.
There are literally tens of thousands of young women who've grown up in poor families. They might have been told, be who you are, don't have dreams. You're not allowed to have big ambitions.
Right.
One of the fathers in Pakistan told his daughter, universities like that, they're not made for people like us. And then Yugo, working through our local partner, says to these young women, be the one.
Yeah.
You can literally be the one to break that mold and go to university. The great news is when these young women are born poor, they are scrappy. They are resilient. We don't say we're going to give you a 1-year scholarship and then hope it goes well. We're betting on them till the day they graduate. We're saying we're helping you go to university. The next job is yours. We're going to give you a long-term scholarship. It's going to renew until the happy day you graduate, but you have to achieve academically. You do that, the scholarship renews automatically. Whoa, these families, Benj, they look at that, they say, like, Allah be praised. Like, this is my daughter's big chance.
Yeah.
She could be a nurse within 4 years. And the achievement rate, the advancement rate of our scholars, and this is now, we have 6,700 young women in the program. So it's not a small sample size now. This is
This year we're getting to 10,000.
This year we're getting to 10,000.
Yeah.
Yes, well, let's talk about that at a certain point.
Sure.
But 98% of our young women advanced to the next level each and every year.
Incredible amount of people.
Yeah, 49 out of 50. And think about that. They still have to take a bus. They still have to work. Some of them still have part-time jobs to make ends meet, but they are hungry and they are excited to be able to have a career and take care of their family.
This is the year, right, that some of those first generation, or actually, no, you've already had some people go through all 4.
379 graduates.
Yeah.
As of this morning.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And as of this morning, me getting my latest update from Tom, our chief of programs, we'll be at 1,200 graduates by the end of this academic year, so around June.
Yeah.
And the goal for the coming year, you just kind of previewed, is that we would like to be 10,000 was our original goal. 10,000 Yugo scholars, and then we said, you know what we should do? We should make it 10,001.
Yeah.
And the idea behind the 1 at the end is to remind ourselves that every dream matters, every scholarship matters. So let's not stop at 10,000.
There you go.
Let's go to 10,001.
Yeah.
So our campaign will be called Be the One. That's our messaging. We're saying to these young women, you can be the one who becomes a doctor, the one who becomes a teacher, the one who has a white collar job in an office, the one who becomes an accountant. And you can be the one who takes care of their family. And that's important because when women in the developing world earn a marginal dollar, they spend 90% of it on their family. Food, clothing, shelter, education, medicine. Men average 35%. I know that you are more enlightened than that, and you clearly spend more than 35% of your money on your family.
Yeah.
And I've seen that because I love Waylon and Baby Jones. I've seen that. I think
Thank you.
There are a lot of men out there who are enlightened. So I will never trash talk men.
Sure.
So many men are involved in Yugo.
Yeah.
And some people say to me, "Oh, is that mostly men who have daughters?" And so they understand it. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of men who have daughters. There's a lot of guys. You have 2 sons. I have 2 sons.
Yeah.
You're a feminist. I'm a feminist.
Yeah.
I don't need to have a daughter to prove to me that educating women is important. It's been said by everybody in the last 20, 30 years, from Nelson Mandela to Hillary Clinton, the importance of us investing in young women.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I'm remembering one of the TEDx talks that when I was in Vail and did mine, there was a young lady who spoke of this. And I remember I texted you like about it in the moment because I was so excited that there were some young people out there who are cognizant of the global circumstance.
Yeah.
When we talk about the global circumstance, I'm always trying to compare it to life here because I think a lot of the people who are going to see this can learn from that scrappiness. And your view of America and what you're seeing with the world here, our bubble of the United States, can you compare that to the way that women are desiring education overseas and what you're seeing here in, like maybe micro or macro?
Yeah, I think that the situation in a lot of the world's poorest or low-income countries is a mirror image of the United States, in the sense that, number one, in the United States, there are more women in university than men. Women are doing better academically than men. It's opposite in the low-income countries, where you have fewer university spots, and the majority of those spots go to men. Secondly, it's the cost. It's that if you want to put one additional student in Stanford, you better have a lot of money, because that tuition is going to be, I don't know if it's, I can't remember, it's $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year.
Yeah.
And you look at, I'll give you an example of this. Phil Knight made a $400 million gift to Stanford.
Okay.
And there are now 100 Knight scholars at Stanford as a result of that. And that's great. But I don't know about you. I don't have $400 million lying around.
I really don't.
If you did, I'd be trying to liberate it from you.
I might not even have this podcast.
In the Hugo world, we can sponsor one young woman to go to university for $800 US per year.
Yeah.
So think about that. If tuition costs at Columbia $80,000 for that one extra student, and I'm not saying people shouldn't do that. If you can afford to do that, go do that. But you're looking at 100 young women in a place like Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nepal, who can go to university on that.
Yeah.
So we'll throw parties, and our San Diego event, which you and Kristen are part of, key parts of. In one night, we'll raise enough money to fund 300 young women to go to university. So we've out-knighted Phil Knight. The Gates scholars at Cambridge, there are 80 Gates scholars on a $200 million spend. That's great.
Yeah.
But most of us don't have Bill Gates' resources. The question comes down to, if you care about education, if you care about helping young women, can you do that at scale at an efficient cost? The answer from Hugo's perspective is yes, you can. How have we gotten 6,700 women into the program? We've been able to do it because we've kept our costs low.
Yep.
I work for no salary. My wife, Amy, who's our chief of marketing, works for no salary. People like you volunteer your time on the boards. We are largely, I would say, 90% of the bandwidth at Hugo is volunteer driven. It's not people looking for a salary. It's people just looking for a purpose.
Yeah, I think in life, like, we all want to make some kind of a difference in the world, and I feel like increasingly harder to impact, because people, I don't know, when you get older, I feel like your connection with all that's like out there to affect, you sort of get more focused on your circle, your smaller circle. Like for me, as I do more like with my family, it's like I feel like I have less and less time for anything else I'm interested in. So the opportunity to help with big, meaningful causes that actually like make a change in someone's life, it feels more important as I do it, because I feel like I have less time to do that as I'm getting older. So that vibe, that feeling I get from like knowing that we're changing people's lives, that they're out there being, beneficiaries of whatever energy I can put in to an event, or to the charity in general is so great. Like it's changed the way I feel day to day, given all the transitions and things I've had with health and life and work and all the things. So it's really a good thing. I guess I want to talk about that from the perspective of working on it as much as like being the beneficiary of that work. Because a big part of the focus of the podcast is mental health and feeling good and healthy and all that in general. And so what do you attribute from like that process of like, because it's fun. It's not just like work to, like when I'm going at stuff for the event, I'm like excited about it. And it's like a good time interacting with the other people on the board for the event and the board for the Wild West board. What do you think it does internally to someone to actually know that you're changing someone's life? Like, how does that affect your mental processes, in your opinion, and like for you going through all these things and knowing it's really changed your work has changed a lot of lives? What does that do for you?
I think for me it just means I wake up every day extremely motivated. I know why I'm on this earth, and for 20 plus years I was on this earth to help grow Room to Read into a global force. And together with thousands of awesome people, we did that, and Room to Read's still prospering and thriving, which is pretty cool, because for most founders, and I had two co-founders at Room to Read, Aaron and Dinesh.
Yes.
All three of us have successfully transitioned to doing something new with our lives, and Room to Read is as strong as ever.
Yeah.
So that's the founder's dilemma of, can you leave something you started and have it still thrive? And Room to Read's doing great.
Yeah.
Now with Yugo, Dinesh is actually involved with getting Yugo Nepal off the ground. So two of the three Room to Read co-founders are together. But going back to your question, I think I wake up every day knowing why I'm on this earth. I have a purpose.
Yeah.
I have a team. There are, to be clear, lots of sucky moments.
Yeah.
Like, there's no doubt. People flake on you. You go to a meeting and you're expecting this person, and you've flown to New York for the meeting, and you're ready for you're in this person's office, and they're fancy, and you know that they're making tons of money, and then you're kind of would you like to support? And it's kind of like, I just wanted to hear what you're up to. I was just interested in meeting you. And not every meeting goes that way, but that's when I think for your focus on mental health and resilience is you have to immediately go, okay, if I hit 333, then I'm on the Padres or the Dodgers making $10 million a year if I hit 333.
Yeah.
So if I hit 500 or 600 as a fundraiser, I'm doing pretty well. My brain goes back to, these young women don't need you to have a bad day. These young women will accept if you have to, John would take 5 minutes to go lick your wounds after a bad meeting or after someone flakes on you. That's okay. But then get back out there. The whole Teddy Roosevelt, get back in the arena.
Yeah, I respect that.
That's how I live my life.
Yeah, and to share for someone who's dealt with depression, for someone who's dealt with anxiety, to wake up and feel motivated for my days and like the things I have to do, including this work as well as the other creative projects I have and all that, it changes my approach to waking up. It changes my approach to the way I can work through my day, is knowing that these things are on the calendar to work on. Like, I feel good doing it, and I think it's something I want to encourage people to try to get out there if they're feeling depressed, if they're feeling anxious. I want them to understand that there's this, I feel like kind of like America, it's like all about you, like, right? Like, I mean, I don't want to get political or whatever with some of the slogans that are out there, but like,
there's selfish people everywhere.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. There's selfish people in India, and there's selfish billionaires and from places. I think for me, one of the main things that I do mentally is I try to be a Buddhist. The teachings of the Dalai Lama were a key reason I quit Microsoft to start Room to Read, because the Dalai Lama taught me through reading. I've never met the guy, unfortunately. I'd love to if he's out there watching this. I'd love to meet you one day. But if all you measure yourself on is by the size of your bank account or the size of your house or whether you have the most recent Maserati, that's a game you can never win.
Yeah.
You can never, there's always be someone who has more money than you.
Yeah.
So focus on what you can control. I can be in a conversation with somebody, they can be like, oh, you should get Jeff Bezos to give you money. I'm like, I can't get you. If I could do that, I would have done it by now. Or somebody will complain about this billionaire's greedy, and I'm kind of, I can't control
how they live their life.
Right. So I just have to be like, hey, dude, I'm in Chicago next week. Can I come see you? And go talk to my friend Jennifer introduces me to somebody else in the private equity world. I need to go get a meeting with that guy and his wife and talk to them about Yugo and just focus on what I can control. So I try as much as possible not to. That's why I made the reference to, I don't spend more than an hour a week on social media.
Yeah.
Because I just find it to be a rabbit hole.
Oh yeah, it's an energy suck.
I try really hard. I try to limit my doom scrolling on the New York Times and all that. I try to limit that to twice a day. And then it's just get back to work. Focus on what you can control. Focus on making the world a better place. And Amy and I, we refer to Yugo as our zone of optimism. We can be doom scrolling about the latest idiocy to come out of the White House. And we'll definitely talk about it. You have to talk about that. And then there's a moment you just go, all right, back to the zone of optimism, back to Yugo, back to helping young women in Pakistan and Bangladesh be the first in their family, to be the one to get educated.
I love that. I'm a huge fan of that you guys have harnessed that, not only for all the women there, but all the boards globally, that you work with. I always have this interaction with the global board as much as the Wild West one, that it's just like, it's fun, meaningful work that keeps you positive. You know, so thank you for that. I want to switch a little bit here to family stuff and talk about being a father. As like you, I've got two boys that have an age gap, and I wanted to hear from you just the challenge of having a second child, in life. For you, when you took that on, and you knew that was coming, I'll put it like that, when you knew you and Amy were having Orion.
And I'm too old to have a second child, was my immediate reaction.
You live so young, John, and so healthily. I mean, you do more activities than anybody I know, like with running, hikes and tennis and all the things that I know you love doing that keep you healthy. But what was it? What mindset did you take on, knowing that a kid was coming? Was there nervousness? Was there excitement? I mean, what was the gamut of it?
I think there's always nervousness because it's change, and it's like your lifestyle is going to be changing for the next 18 years because that's the life cycle before your child's going to leave for university. Now I'm already pre-nostalgic. Like I don't want Orion is now 5 years old.
Yeah.
I'm like I don't want Orion to go to university in 13 years.
You
I want
can
him to
see
do
how
this
quick it's coming.
forever.
Yeah.
But I think that one of the things that's been most meaningful for me, for both my boys. So Ian is 17. He's about to graduate from high school, and he's making that important decision right now of where to go to university. That's a really fun thing to watch.
Yeah.
Ian's a brilliant kid. He's got his head screwed on straight. He's not one of these kids who thinks if I don't go to Stanford or Harvard, my life is over. He's the kind of teenager who's like, I'm going to make of my life what I make of it. It's not with the university that I brand on myself. It's what I make of my own life. And then Orion, who's 5, taking the two of them to go see Hugo's work, taking both of them to go meet these scholars. Ian last year, my older son, he turned down an opportunity to go to Japan on a pleasure trip for spring break because he wanted to come with me to Da Nang, Vietnam, to be part of Hugo's annual global offsite.
Wow!
And this for him was a working trip. He was gonna be the AV guy and the gopher and the guy like, hey buddy, go get me a coffee.
Yeah.
And he chose to do that with his spring break. He works at our San Francisco events. He works at our San Diego events. He puts on a nice suit, and when you bid at the live auction and you bid $5,000 for the Vail Prize, it's Ian who comes over with the clipboard and he shakes your hand, looks you in the eye, and says, "Thank you for supporting Hugo.
Yeah.
May I please have your credit card?"
He's a phenomenal kid. I mean, a young adult, I should say.
Yeah.
I've been really impressed with him, and I've been lucky to see him, go through his teenage years pretty much, since we got to know each other.
Yeah.
I think he's a great example of a kid with his head on straight and like doing things for the right reasons, the right ways.
Yeah.
And being excited about being in a position to chart his life out.
Yeah, and I think for both boys, it's to be able to see Amy and I working on something that is meaningful. I don't want to sound self-righteous, but that's something that's bigger than ourselves.
Yeah.
If I was still at Microsoft, he'd probably want to come in the office with me and learn about the latest whiz-bang technology.
Yeah.
But both boys can go with us to Indonesia, to Nepal, to Vietnam, meet these young women whose lives are being changed forever. And that, for me, as a parent, is the ultimate way to be a role model, to say you can live a life that's bigger than just yourself.
That's
and they're
fantastic.
both aware. Orion's 5.5, so I don't think he's totally aware of it right now, but Ian certainly is aware that we make sacrifices to do this work.
Right.
Amy and I could both make money in the private sector if we devoted our lives to that, but we're saying we're going to work for no salary to show that we have skin in the game.
Yeah.
And we're going to lead by example and keep the overhead costs as low as possible so that Hugo's money can go further. I love being a parent. I feel the biggest challenge with it for me is I want to spend lots of time with both boys, but Hugo is a global organization, and being founder and CEO of a global organization, you don't sit in San Diego 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. You're on the road a lot.
Totally.
So I send videos, I text, I let them know I'm thinking about them.
Yeah.
But they're, I think, both aware that this is, for Amy and I, this is who we are.
Yeah.
We can't stop traveling to build this organization. The key is to travel enough to be effective, but not so much that you're an absentee parent who's going to one day regret being away so often.
Well, and a lot of times you brought the children with you, the young adult with you.
That's the ultimate, yeah.
Which is, I mean, I guess I'm wondering, what have you seen in them with them being able to absorb international culture? Because I think there's a difference in like college plus age people experiencing a culture rather than, like, for me, I had a very intense experience when I was 17 turning 18 in Israel. I was over there and I walked around Palestinian villages and explored the country and all that. I know it was a game changer and completely shifted my perspective of America in a good way, you know, an appreciative way, like where I realized how good we have it over here and stopped taking a lot of the things I wasn't really cognizant of or wasn't aware of that I was so lucky to have, and that those came to be more visible and illuminated after a trip. Have you seen that shift maybe with Ian more than Orion?
Well, definitely with Ian, because he's older and he's been able to. He's been to Vietnam. He's been all over these Yugo countries and room to read countries. So I think for him, he said it makes him appreciate his education. We live in North County, San Diego.
Yeah.
We have some of the world's best public schools, so we can send our kids to a public school and not pay tuition. And I think he just realizes, I shouldn't say I know he realizes that he's lucky that we live in a bit of a bubble here.
Yeah.
But rather than flagellate ourselves for living in a bubble, let's just take advantage of the fact that we have the opportunity to help kids who don't have the same advantages that our kids have.
Yeah, and he shows that on a regular basis every time I get to interact with him. So what is on the horizon when you look at crossing the threshold of 10,001?
Yeah.
You know, what is on the horizon for your goals, you know, in life?
20,002 and then 30,003.
Okay.
And I mean, honestly, it's, we're in 9 low-income countries currently. I'd like to add a few more countries in the next couple of years. There's places like Nigeria and Ethiopia and Kenya and Sri Lanka where there are still significant gaps, gender gaps, opportunity gaps.
Can you talk about like launching in another country? What kinds of challenges you face? And I know they're probably all different, but like, you know.
I think the key thing for Yugo when we go into a new country is just the quality of the local partner. Yugo made a decision early on that we would not go plant the flag in a country and hire our own staff and start from scratch.
Yeah.
There's all these great nonprofits or non-governmental organizations, whatever you call them, out there already doing the work.
Yeah.
They've worked in these communities for a decade or two. So the key thing for Yugo is to find the next version of Jago, our partner in Bangladesh. Developments in literacy, which has been working in Pakistan since 1998. So they have a 28-year history of working in the Pakistan school system. So they've known these young women since they were 5 or 6 or 7 years old. They know the parents by name. When that parent says, my daughter is ready to study engineering and become a computer scientist, that's not just some crazy dream. They know that young woman. So the quality of the local partners is important. The funding is important. Obviously, we can't just go into a country. We don't want to go into a country and award 1 or 2 scholarships and pat ourselves on the back and say, yay. We want to do everything we do at scale. We want to start with at least 100 scholars in a new country and then go to 200 and 400 and 800. As an example, this year in the Philippines, we will for the first time in our history award 1,000 scholarships this year in one country alone in the Philippines.
Wow.
And it's still not enough because we have over 10,000 young women on the waiting list in the Philippines.
Is it that many?
Yeah, I mean, the Philippines is a very youthful country. If anybody is listening to this has not traveled to the Philippines, I'd say travel to the Philippines. It's the greatest country in the world.
Really?
It's so underrated. The people are wonderful. The food is awesome. English proficiency is high enough that you can joke and talk and communicate. The Philippines is incredibly youthful. I can't remember the statistic, but it's something like 50% of the people in the Philippines are under the age of 30.
Sounds like the Austin, Texas of Asia.
Good analogy.
No, it sounds like an awesome place to get to go and experience, and also to be able to help that amount of people, that density of younger people.
Amy and I met a young woman in the Philippines. She's a Yugo scholar, and she is getting her teaching degree, but her teaching degree is in helping special needs students.
Oh, beautiful.
So it could be autism, it could be kids with
speech
you name
language
it.
Stuff,
But we asked her about it, and she said, well, in the Philippines right now, the ratio of teachers trained in this field to the number of students needed, it is 50-1 students to trained teachers. Think about a child with special needs. That you need a ratio that's way lower than that. So then we looked at it and said, okay, we need to be casting our net wider and start with her. Who do you know? Do you know a student in your class who's in danger of dropping out due to financial reasons? If so, introduce them to the Yugo Ayala Foundation partnership in the Philippines so we can help that young woman. When I started Yugo, I thought most of what we'd be doing would be awarding new scholarships to first-year students. We learned very quickly that there are a number of young women out there who are in year 2 or year 3. The family's financial situation changes. The family might have been able to afford to bootstrap 1 year of university.
Right.
So we have a dropout prevention program. We also launched something called the Finish Line Fund, recognizing that everything happening in Iran and the Strait of Hormuz, fuel prices going up, food prices going up. We announced to our 14 partners last week something called the Finish Line Fund. Amy came up with the name. The idea behind it is any student whose family is experiencing economic hardship and is therefore at risk of dropping out because fertilizer prices have gone up and your father's a farmer, we have a fund now where we can basically have those young men, they can apply to say, I need X just to get through. The finish line is the end of this academic year. So looking at a global tragedy of what's happening with inflation, our team looked at it and said, what is our role in this? Our role in this is to send messages to all 6,700 young women. Don't drop out. If you're at risk of it, tell us. Now also don't game the system. Don't make up a story, but these young women,
these are people, it seems
ethical.
like, they're there for the right reasons and doing things the right way. Again, that's very important. When you come up with something like that, how challenging is it to sort of like make it real and implement? Do you think it helps that you're a small organization? You can just, create?
The Finish Line Fund literally was, I read the New York Times story about rising fertilizer prices. There was a case study of a farmer in India. I know a lot of Yugo scholars who come from farming families and the price of fertilizer. And I ran it by Amy. We called Tom, our chief of programs. We did a call. Tom said $10,000 feels like the right amount. I said, let's start with $10,000. If we need more than that, I'll find it because I'm good at finding money. I'm good at finding donors. Amy said, let's call it the Finish Line Fund. I said to Tom, do you want to announce it to partners or should I? He goes, it has to come from you. Has to come from the top so people realize this has your stamp on it. And we wrote something up. We used a little bit of help from Perplexity. I like to do first drafts on Perplexity. Then we Johnized it. We then took it and made sure that it was in my language, it was in my voice.
Awesome.
We announced it, I think, 8 or 9 hours after I read that New York Times article.
Wow. I mean, nothing in the world really works like that. Like if we could get a government to work that quickly, it would be pretty amazing.
I woke up the next morning, talk about waking up motivated, with notes from Bangladesh, from India, from Indonesia saying, we love working with you guys because you're not only generous, you're also strategic. And we are seeing these, but our partner in Bangladesh said, we've already set up our own fund for the same reason. But if our fund runs out, we'll tap into your fund. That's when you know, that was Corby in Bangladesh. You know you have the right partner when they've already said, we've already begun doing something similar.
We're on the same page. That's amazing.
Kindred spirits.
Yeah, totally. And it's the alignment that makes so much sense. And also just to say it, like $10,000 doesn't sound like a huge amount, but I imagine the way that can help so many people in these circumstances.
100 young women might need $100 each. And if
Right.
that's what it takes to get them to not have to drop out, and that money helps them to help their family, then that's $10,000 well spent.
Yeah, I got to hand it to you, the resourcefulness and ingenuity and just the initiative to do these things is really phenomenal. And
we're only as good as our investors, and we're very fortunate. We don't call them donors, we call them investors because they're investing in these young women. We just have a really very generous support base. And that's nice because when you have some extra money in the bank, then you don't have to say we're going to announce this fund as soon as I make 16 phone calls. Let's just announce the fund, and we can always just go backfill it.
I get that. I think the way you're doing it makes so much sense because you can adjust as you go and see what the need is and then fulfill the need.
And my motto in life is GSD. Get shit done.
There you go.
We could spend a week or a month debating exactly what the wording is, exactly the size. Nope, just announce it and run with it. And then what's great is we have these 14 partners all around the world. They're going to come back to us to tell us how do we need to change it or how it needs to evolve. But the thing is, you've got to get version 1 out there. If you don't get version 1 out there, you can't get feedback. And so I'm not a big fan of being in the ivory tower overthinking things. I'm very much let's take action.
And from my experience too, like a great performance or anything, it's not about perfection. It's about just like doing your best in that moment and then learning from that and making your adjustments for the next rounds of it. And so I fully am on board with the way you're addressing all of these global issues. I wish we had more time because I honestly could keep talking to you, and that's why we're friends, so we will, but we won't be on camera. But I'm really grateful that you're on the show.
Can I say hi to your parents?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Harvey. Hi, Jennifer. I know you're watching.
I love
your parents.
Yeah, I do too. They're wonderful people, and a big reason why I'm here doing this. So,
I listened to the podcast you did with the YMCA, and you talked about when your dad brought home a bass guitar.
Yes.
And said, you're already playing guitar and you're playing piano, and your dad gave you a bass guitar. And said, I think you're going to really like this. And I wonder what that's like for Harvey to then see you, at Red Rocks or an iconic place like that with 9,000 people standing and cheering. What's that like for a father and a mother when they see they've launched a really good kid into the world?
Well,
Pretty cool
I
feeling.
got to have you do a podcast with my parents now, but I think they're quite proud and happy with the way my life has weaved around and gone. So thank you for that. I'll make sure they watch this one specifically. But everybody, thank you for joining in. This has been really special to get John on the show, and just I hope you can check out ugouniversity.org because it's very near and dear to my heart, and obviously it's an important thing that we could all support in some way, and I hope you choose to do that. And till the next episode, I hope you can be good to yourself and be good to others. See you next time.